The grand ballroom of the Grand Hyatt in Seattle buzzed with conversation. Crystal chandeliers gleamed overhead, casting a warm light over hundreds of board members, high-profile investors, and tech executives attending Vance Tech's annual shareholders gala. I adjusted my dark blue tie, standing near the front row of tables with a proud smile. 6 years ago, when Vance Tech was just an idea in a small garage, my late father-in-law Marcus and I wrote the core algorithm on a single laptop. I spent endless nights coding, sacrificing my own startup, all to make my wife's dream a reality. Tonight was supposed to be the celebration of our biggest product launch. "Nervous, Nathan?" a polished, condescending voice asked from behind me. I turned to see Carter Sterling, our recently hired vice president of business development. He wore an immaculate bespoke tuxedo, holding a glass of vintage champagne with an arrogant, easy posture. "Not at all, Carter," I replied, keeping my tone professional. The market metrics for our new neural platform exceeded expectations by 40%. The shareholders have every reason to celebrate. "Metrics are fine, Nathan," Carter smirked, taking a slow sip. "But in this industry, optics matter far more than code written by someone hiding away in a back office." Before I could answer, the room's lights dimmed slightly. Spotlight beams centered on the main stage as my wife, Samantha Vance, stepped up to the crystal podium. She looked stunning in an emerald green silk evening gown, her dark hair pinned back flawlessly. My heart swelled with quiet affection. I caught her gaze for a split second, expecting a subtle, reassuring nod. Instead, her eyes flicked past me as if I were invisible. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," Samantha's confident voice echoed through the high-powered speakers. "Welcome to Vance Tech's annual gala. Tonight, we celebrate record-breaking growth and the dawn of a new era for our corporation." The crowd applauded warmly. I joined in, clapping proudly from my spot near the stage. "To lead this company into the future," Samantha continued, her expression turning cool and businesslike, "we must make bold, necessary structural changes. A modern tech giant requires modern, high-caliber leadership at the very top." I frowned slightly, feeling a strange, subtle tightness in my chest. We hadn't discussed any executive restructuring at home. "Effective immediately," Samantha announced, pointing toward the side of the stage. "I am promoting Carter Sterling to Executive Vice President and Acting Head of Corporate Operations." Carter grinned, buttoning his tuxedo jacket as he stepped onto the stage to stand right beside my wife. The audience clapped enthusiastically, though a few senior board members exchanged curious glances. "And what about our current technical direction?" a senior investor called out from the second row. "What does this mean for Nathan Cross?" Samantha cleared her throat, resting her hands flat against the podium. She looked straight ahead, deliberately avoiding my eyes. "Nathan has served this company dutifully during its early development phase," Samantha said, her voice completely devoid of warmth or personal emotion. "However, as CEO, I must put Vance Tech's global image first. Nathan's traditional background no longer aligns with our aggressive expansion goals." A quiet gasp rippled through the front tables. My hands froze at my sides. "Samantha?" I muttered under my breath, my throat suddenly going dry. "What are you doing?" "To ensure our operational efficiency," Samantha stated clearly into the microphone. "Nathan Cross will be stepping down from his role as Chief Technology Officer." The ballroom went deathly quiet. Whispers broke out like wildfire among the investors surrounding me. "Stepping down?" I whispered, my voice trembling as shock coursed through my veins. "He will be transitioning into a role better suited to his practical skill set," Samantha added, her face like a marble mask. "Nathan will now serve as an entry-level IT support technician in our basement server facilities." Laughter erupted from Carter's friends near the bar. The surrounding board members stared at me with a mixture of pity, shock, and cruel amusement. "Is this a joke?" I called out, taking 2 steps toward the stage, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Samantha, we built this platform together. I am the Chief Technology Officer." Carter stepped up to the microphone, pulling a small microphone off its stand with an arrogant grin. "Please, Nathan, keep your composure. This is a formal corporate event, not a family living room." Let the security team do their jobs without a scene. You demoted your own husband to a basement technician in front of our entire board? I asked, looking directly up at Samantha, my chest tightening with an overwhelming, agonizing heartbreak. This is a business decision, Nathan, Samantha said coldly, speaking directly over the speakers so everyone could hear. You lack the prestige, the social standing, and the high society presence that Vance Tech needs right now. Carter brings elite connections. You bring outdated modesty. Outdated modesty? I echoed, staring at the woman I had loved and supported for 6 long years. I gave up my own company for you. I put your name on every patent we file, and you were compensated with a steady salary. Samantha retorted sharply, her tone cutting through me like an ice-cold blade. Now please, take a seat or exit the ballroom quietly. You are embarrassing the company. Carter leaned into the microphone with a soft chuckle. If you need help finding the basement IT desk on Monday, Nathan, I'll have my assistant print out a map for you. Subtle chuckles echoed through the front rows. Several attendees turned away, whispering behind their linen napkins. I stood frozen in the center of the spotlight, surrounded by hundreds of people who viewed me as nothing more than an embarrassing footnote in Samantha's rise to power. The woman who had sworn to honor and respect me had just traded my dignity for corporate prestige and Carter's hollow charm. I didn't yell further. I didn't cause a physical scene. I slowly reached up, straightened my jacket, and pulled my hands out of my pockets. Samantha thought she had just stripped me of my power. Carter thought he had taken my place at the top of Vance Tech. They had no idea that every single core system running inside Vance Tech servers belonged to my private holding firm, or that I held the master key to their entire existence. I turned around and walked out of the ballroom in complete, silent dignity. I slammed the heavy glass door of the top-floor executive suite behind me, my chest heaving with unrestrained anger. Samantha sat behind her sleek marble desk, casually sipping champagne as if she hadn't just torn my dignity to shreds in front of hundreds of people. How could you do that to me, Samantha? I demanded, my voice raw with heartbreak. In front of the entire board? In front of our investors? Samantha set her crystal glass down with a slow, deliberate clink. Lower your voice, Nathan. The gala is still going on downstairs. Lower my voice? I echoed, taking 3 sharp steps toward her desk. You publicly stripped me of my position. You handed my life's work to Carter Sterling on a silver platter and exiled me to a basement server room. It was a necessary business decision, Samantha said coldly, folding her hands over the marble surface. Vance Tech is competing for international venture capital. Investors don't want a quiet, humble chief technology officer who drives a 5-year-old sedan. They want someone with prestige, flair, and high society clout. I built our neural architecture, I shouted, pointing a finger at my own chest. Carter doesn't even understand the basic code structure. He's a charismatic fraud who talks fast. Carter has connections that you could never dream of acquiring, Nathan. Samantha shot back, her dark eyes flashing with sharp irritation. He brought 3 institutional funds to our gala tonight. What did you bring? More bug fixes? I gave up my own software company 6 years ago for you. I reminded her, tears of frustration burning behind my eyes. Your father Marcus trusted me to build Vance Tech beside you. We swore a vow to be partners in life and in business. My father was overly sentimental, a sharp, condescending voice declared from the doorway. My mother-in-law, Eleanor Vance, stepped into the office wearing a dripping diamond necklace. She sneered at me as she crossed her arms. Don't bring my late husband into this, Nathan, Eleanor sneered disdainfully. Marcus took pity on you because you were a penniless orphan with a coding degree. But you were always just a common nobody who got lucky by marrying into my family. Eleanor, stay out of this, I warned softly, turning my gaze back to my wife. Samantha, is this really how you see me? A nobody who got lucky? Samantha looked away, her silence cutting deeper than any physical knife ever could. Answer me, Samantha, I pressed, my voice breaking. Look me in the eyes and tell me our 6 years of marriage meant nothing to you. Your modest attitude drags this company down, Nathan, Samantha said, avoiding my eyes as she picked up a gold pen. You refuse to move into the penthouse. You refuse to wear tailored suits. You embarrass me at every high society dinner party by talking about ethics and hard work. I live simply because true strength doesn't need to show off, I said, feeling a sudden, chilling clarity settle over my shattered heart. I stayed humble because I thought we were building a future based on real values. Well, your values don't win billion-dollar valuation rounds. Eleanor chimed in with a sharp, cruel laugh. Samantha belongs in the top tier of Seattle society. She belongs beside men like Carter Sterling, not an entry-level technician who belongs in a dark basement. I looked at Eleanor, then back at Samantha, who didn't say a single word to defend me. The warmth, devotion, and love I had carried for 6 long years withered away in a single instant. The woman standing before me wasn't the passionate partner I had married. She was a stranger blinded by ruthless greed and hollow status. I see, I said, my tone suddenly dropping into a cold, eerie calm. You made your choice, Samantha. Don't be dramatic, Nathan, Samantha scoffed, signing a document on her desk. You still have a job here. Go home, pack your things from the master bedroom, and move into the guest house. We can discuss your severance package next month. I won't be moving into any guest house, I said smoothly, unbuttoning my cuffs. And you don't need to worry about my modest attitude dragging down your elite image anymore. Without another word, I turned on my heel and walked out of the executive suite, leaving Eleanor's dismissive scoffs behind. I took the private elevator straight down to the quiet garage. I pulled out my cell phone and dialed a secure, encrypted number I hadn't used in 3 years. Nathan, a sharp, alert female voice answered on the second ring. It's late. Is everything okay? I need your legal help, Chloe, I said, leaning against my car as cold night air filled my lungs. My sister, Chloe Cross, one of the top corporate litigation attorneys on the West Coast, instantly caught the dark shift in my voice. What did Samantha do? She demoted me to a basement IT tech at the annual gala, I replied flatly, in front of 300 board members and investors. She handed my operational authority to Carter Sterling. Chloe let out an explosive gasp over the line. She did what? After you gave up your original firm to build Vance Tech from scratch. It gets worse, I added softly. She told me my humble lifestyle embarrasses her high society ambitions. That ungrateful snake, Chloe hissed furiously. Nathan, tell me you are finally ready to drop the humble act and crush them. I am ready, I said, my gaze hardening like tempered steel. Execute Protocol Alpha. Are you sure? Chloe asked, her tone shifting into pure professional focus. If I unlock the offshore holding trust, Vance Tech's board will find out the truth tomorrow morning. Let them find out, I commanded. Confirm the master patent deeds registered under my personal holding entity and pull the voting proxies. Consider it done, brother. Chloe chuckled darkly over the phone. They think Samantha owns 51% of Vance Tech, but your private entity holds the controlling voting shares and every single line of core IP. What's the next move? We sell Vance Tech, I declared coldly into the night. Call Julian Blackwood. Tell him Vance Tech's real owner is ready to hand him his rival on a silver platter. The fluorescent light in the windowless basement office flickered overhead, casting a harsh glare across my small metal desk. Dust hovered over old server racks humming loudly in the humid room. The door burst open, and Carter Sterling stepped inside, stepping carefully over loose Ethernet cables in his $1,000 leather shoes. He held a cold, half-empty mug of black coffee in his right hand. Good morning, Nathan, Carter drawled, tossing a thick, dusty binder directly onto my keyboard. I see you've settled into your new corporate kingdom. I looked up from my screen, keeping my expression completely neutral. What do you need, Carter? First of all, you address me as Vice President Sterling, Carter corrected, leaning against the edge of my desk with a condescending smirk. Second, the third-floor printer is jammed, and my executive assistant's laptop won't connect to the wireless network. Go fix them immediately. The third-floor printer? I asked, raising an eyebrow. You brought me down to level B2 for basic office maintenance? You're an entry-level IT technician now, Nathan, Carter chuckled, swirling his coffee. Samantha signed your demotion paperwork yesterday. Your days of pretending to be a high-tech visionary are over. Know your place. I know my place very well, Carter, I said quietly, standing up and sliding my chair back. I'll handle the network tickets. Good boy. Carter sneered, slapping my shoulder heavily before turning toward the door. Make sure you clean the dust off my desk while you're upstairs. High society executives need clean workspaces. I watched him walk out, feeling a cold, silent calm settle over my chest. I picked up my coat, walked past the security turnstiles, and took the private elevator down to the underground parking garage. 20 minutes later, I walked into the top-floor penthouse suite of Blackwood Dynamics, Vance Tech's fiercest market rival. Glass walls offered a breathtaking view of the Seattle skyline, flooded with bright morning sunlight. Nathan Cross, a deep, commanding voice called out. Julian Blackwood stood up from his glass desk. At 35, the billionaire CEO carried an aura of absolute power, wearing a charcoal three-piece suit. Beside him stood my sister, Chloe, holding a thick leather briefcase. Julian, I said, stepping forward to shake his hand firmly. Thank you for taking this meeting on short notice. When Chloe Cross calls my legal team claiming she represents the true majority shareholder of Vance Tech, Julian said, offering me a leather chair, I clear my entire schedule. Please sit. I sat down, while Chloe unzipped her briefcase and laid 4 stamped legal documents flat on the glass coffee table. Let's skip the small talk, Nathan, Julian said, leaning back with a sharp, intrigued gaze. Vance Tech just hosted their annual gala last night. Word on Wall Street is that Samantha Vance publicly demoted her own husband to a basement technician to elevate Carter Sterling. Word travels fast, I noted dryly. It's absolute corporate madness, Julian said, shaking his head with a cold laugh. Samantha is letting that arrogant playboy run her company into the ground. But why are you here? Are you looking for a job as my chief architect? I don't need a job, Julian, I replied smoothly, sliding the top folder across the table toward him. I'm offering you the ultimate corporate takeover. Julian opened the folder, his eyes widening slightly as he scanned the first page. These are master patent deeds for Vance Tech's core neural processing engine. Every single line of proprietary code running inside Vance Tech belongs to my personal holding entity, Cross Innovations, I explained, leaning forward. Samantha thought she owned the IP because my name was on the marriage certificate. She never checked the primary assignment clauses. And these voting proxies? Julian asked, turning to the second document, his breath hitching slightly. My offshore trust owns 51% of Vance Tech's voting shares, Chloe interjected sharply, tapping the official red seal on the bottom corner. Samantha only owns 49%. She has been operating on borrowed authority for 6 years. Julian looked up from the documents, staring at me with profound respect. You built their entire empire while keeping the absolute control keys in your own pocket? I kept quiet because I love my wife, I said, my voice hardening. I believed we were building a future together. But last night, she traded 6 years of loyalty for Carter Sterling's empty connections and high society status. She threw away a genius for a clown. Julian stated plainly, a dark, brilliant smile spreading across his face. What are your conditions for the buyout, Nathan? I am offering Blackwood Dynamics a complete purchase option, I declared. You buy my 51% controlling stake and master patent rights for $1. Julian paused, narrowing his eyes in disbelief. $1? Nathan, those patents are worth at least $3 billion on the open market. I don't want their money, Julian, I said, looking him dead in the eye. I want Samantha and Carter to realize the true cost of their arrogance. Once you execute the buyout, you acquire Vance Tech as a subsidiary, strip Carter of his operational authority, and fire him immediately. And Samantha? Julian asked, leaning forward with intense curiosity. Demote her, I replied coldly. Make her report to an entry-level desk, just like she did to me. Let her experience what it feels like to be treated as an inconvenient footnote. Julian let out a loud, booming laugh that echoed through the penthouse office. Nathan, you are far more ruthless than the media ever gave you credit for. This is absolute poetry. Do we have a deal? I asked, extending my hand across the glass table. We have a deal, Julian said, shaking my hand with massive force. He turned to his chief legal counsel, Evelyn Reed, who had just stepped out from the adjacent conference room. Evelyn, draft the acquisition contracts immediately. Protocol execution starts at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Consider it done, Mr. Blackwood, Evelyn replied with a sharp, professional smile. I stood up, buttoning my suit jacket, feeling the heavy weight of betrayal finally lifting off my shoulders. They think they won, Nathan, Chloe said softly, placing a reassuring hand on my arm as we walked toward the elevator. Let them celebrate today, Chloe, I answered, watching the elevator doors slide open. Tomorrow, the bill comes due. The executive boardroom on the top floor of Vance Tech was packed with board members, major institutional investors, and press representatives. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, highlighting the champagne flutes resting beside polished leather folders. I sat quietly in the back row, wearing a plain gray shirt, holding a notepad like any lower-level IT staff member assigned to record meeting minutes. Look at him back there, Carter whispered loudly to Samantha from the head of the long mahogany table, ensuring the nearby directors could hear. From chief technology officer to glorified secretarial support in less than 48 hours. Samantha adjusted her dark blazer, casting a brief, detached glance in my direction before returning her focus to the front of the room. Focus on the presentation, Carter. Nathan chose his path when he refused to adapt to our corporate vision. Of course, CO Vance, Carter smirked, standing up and buttoning his suit jacket as he tapped the remote to activate the massive digital display wall behind them. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, welcome to the future of Vance Tech. The investors clapped politely as slides displaying glowing financial charts appeared on the screen. Today, we announce Project Sentinel, Carter declared with booming confidence. A multi-billion-dollar global expansion centered entirely around our proprietary neural processing architecture. Under my leadership, we are scaling this platform across European and Asian markets simultaneously. This is an incredibly aggressive timeline, Carter, a senior board member, Mr. Henderson, noted, leaning forward with his arms crossed. Global expansion requires immense liquidity. How are we funding this rollout? I'm glad you asked, Mr. Henderson. Carter smiled smoothly, turning to Samantha. Samantha and I have structured a complete capital reallocation. We are leveraging our entire liquid reserve, $200 million, to back institutional loans for infrastructure. A low murmur rippled through the room. Leveraging our entire cash reserve? Mr. Henderson asked, frowning slightly. If market conditions shift, or if technical hiccups arise with the neural architecture, Vance Tech will have zero financial safety net. There will be no technical hiccups, Mr. Henderson, Samantha interjected firmly, taking the floor with absolute composure. The core architecture is flawless, and with Carter leading operations, we finally have the dynamic, high-caliber leadership needed to execute this vision. What about Nathan Cross? Another investor called out from the second row. He was the chief architect behind that code. Is he supervising the global migration? Carter let out a soft, mocking laugh that echoed across the quiet boardroom. Nathan was useful during our early garage days, but his conservative mindset held us back. He lacked the social prestige and strategic drive required for international expansion. Frankly, replacing him was the best decision this board ever supported. Samantha nodded in silent agreement, offering the investors a polished smile. Vance Tech has outgrown Nathan's modest boundaries. Today, we step into the elite tier of Silicon West. I sat in the back row, silently writing down their exact words on my notepad, feeling no anger, only a cold, detached amusement. They were publicly pledging $200 million of borrowed money against software patents they didn't even own. With this expansion contract signed, Carter announced, picking up a heavy silver pen and handing it to Samantha, Vance Tech officially triples its market valuation by the end of the fiscal quarter. Let us sign the authorization documents, Samantha declared, leaning over the leather-bound agreement on the table. She pressed the pen tip to the paper, ready to finalize the transaction. Suddenly, the heavy double doors of the boardroom burst open with a loud thud. Samantha's executive secretary rushed into the room, her face completely pale, gasping for breath as she clutched a glowing tablet to her chest. Mrs. Vance, the secretary cried out, her voice trembling frantically in front of the entire audience. "Stop! Do not sign those papers." Samantha froze, lifting the pen, her brows furrowing in deep irritation. "What is the meaning of this interruption, Sarah? We are in the middle of a binding board vote." "It's the public exchange, ma'am," Sarah gasped, tapping her tablet frantically as she ran toward the head of the table. 5 minutes ago, an anonymous institutional entity began aggressively acquiring Vance Tech Class A shares on the open market. Carter scoffed, waving his hand dismissively. "So an investor is buying our stock after hearing about Project Sentinel. That's good news, you foolish girl." "No, Mr. Sterling, you don't understand," Sarah yelled, her voice cracking with terror. "They aren't just buying floating shares. They just bought out 3 of our primary angel funds in private block trades. Over 40% of our public float moved in single blocks." "What?" Samantha gasped, dropping her silver pen onto the mahogany table as the board members jumped to their feet in utter chaos. "Who is buying our shares?" "It's a hostile market sweep," Mr. Henderson shouted, staring at his personal phone screen in complete shock. "Someone is consolidating voting control of Vance Tech right under our noses." "That's impossible," Carter yelled, his arrogant demeanor instantly shattering as he grabbed the secretary's tablet. "Samantha owns 51% of the total voting shares. Nobody can take control of this company without her approval." "Actually, Carter," I spoke up softly from the back row, my voice carrying clearly across the panicked boardroom. Every head turned toward the back of the room. Samantha, Carter, and the board members stared at me in total confusion as I slowly closed my paper notepad and stood up from my chair. "What are you talking about, Nathan?" Samantha demanded, her voice tight with rising panic. "Sit down. This is an executive crisis, not an IT matter. You should really check the primary equity registry before making promises to your investors, Samantha," I said smoothly, stepping out from behind my desk and walking down the center aisle. "Get him out of here," Carter barked frantically, pointing a shaking finger at me. "Security, remove this technician immediately." Before security could move, a crisp notification chime echoed simultaneously across every board member's smartphone. "Look at the SEC filing," an investor gasped, staring at his screen in disbelief. A controlling 51% voting block just transferred to a single holding trust. Samantha turned deathly pale, gripping the edge of the marble table as she looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. "Nathan, what did you do?" "I didn't do anything, Samantha," I replied with a calm smile, stopping right in front of the head table. "Your new majority owner just arrived." The double doors of the boardroom swung open wide. Julian Blackwood strode inside, wearing a charcoal suit, accompanied by his chief legal counsel, Evelyn Reed. 2 security guards stood firmly behind them. "What is the meaning of this intrusion?" Carter shouted, stepping out from behind the podium. "Julian Blackwood, you have no right to walk into a private Vance Tech board meeting. Security, throw them out immediately." "I suggest your guards stay right where they are, Mr. Sterling," Evelyn Reed said smoothly, opening a thick leather binder. She pulled out a stamped document and placed it flat on the mahogany table. "Unless you want to be arrested for interfering with corporate governance." "This is absurd," Samantha declared, her voice trembling slightly as she stood up. "Julian, you are our chief market competitor. You cannot simply crash my board meeting and make demands." "It isn't your board meeting anymore, Samantha," Julian said coldly, resting his hands on the back of a leather chair. "Evelyn, read them the filing." As of 8:45 this morning, Evelyn announced, her crisp voice echoing across the silent room, Blackwood Dynamics executed a binding purchase option. We acquired 51% of Vance Tech's Class A voting stock alongside master patent rights to your entire neural architecture. Gasps erupted from the board members. Mr. Henderson gripped his smartphone, staring at Evelyn in shock. "Master patent rights? But Vance Tech owned those patents." "Vance Tech held a temporary license," Evelyn corrected sharply. "The master patent deeds were registered under Cross Innovations, an independent private holding trust. That trust officially sold all intellectual property rights to Blackwood Dynamics 20 minutes ago." "Cross Innovations?" Samantha whispered, her face turning completely pale as her gold pen slipped from her frozen fingers, clattering onto the floor. No, that's impossible. Marcus told me, your father Marcus set up that trust for the real genius behind this company. Julian cut in, his dark eyes scanning the frantic faces of the board. Blackwood Dynamics is now the parent company of Vance Tech. And as the chief executive of your new parent firm, I am here to meet the majority owner who made this entire acquisition possible. Who? Carter demanded frantically, sweat glistening on his forehead as his arrogant facade completely shattered. Who sold you our stock? Who owns Cross Innovations? I buttoned my dark suit jacket and took 3 slow, deliberate steps toward the head of the conference table. I do, Carter, I said quietly. The silence that fell over the boardroom was absolute. Every single eye in the room locked onto me. Nathan, Samantha gasped, stumbling backward until her knees hit her executive leather chair. You own Cross Innovations? I created Cross Innovations 6 years ago, Samantha, I said, stopping directly across from her. When I gave up my original startup to help you build Vance Tech, your father made sure my intellectual property remained protected under my personal trust. I allowed Vance Tech to use my code for free because I loved you. You lied to me, Samantha cried out, her voice cracking with pure desperation. For 6 years, you let me believe I owned 51% of this company. You own 49% of the operating entity, Samantha, I replied, keeping my tone perfectly calm. I never brought up my controlling stake because I trusted you. I believed we were true partners, but at the gala 2 nights ago, you proved that my loyalty meant nothing to you. Nathan, please, Carter blurted out, taking a frantic step toward me, his hands shaking violently. We can talk about this. We can restructure your contract. You can be chief technology officer again. Double the salary. I don't work for you, Carter, I said softly, looking him up and down. And you don't work here anymore either. Julian stepped forward, resting a hand on my shoulder before turning his gaze to Carter. Mr. Sterling, as the new controlling entity, Blackwood Dynamics is terminating your employment effective immediately. Security, escort Mr. Sterling out of the building. You can't fire me, Carter screamed as the 2 security guards grabbed his arms, dragging him backward toward the exit. My father's fund invested millions in this company. Samantha, tell them. Samantha didn't say a word. She stared at me in total, speech-filled horror as Carter's desperate yells faded down the hallway. And as for you, Samantha, Julian said, looking down at my wife, your reckless decision to leverage $200 million on technology you didn't own proves you are unfit to lead this firm. Effective today, you are relieved of your duties as chief executive officer. Nathan, Samantha sobbed, tears finally breaking past her eyes as she reached out across the table, her hands trembling. Please, don't do this to me. I made a terrible mistake. I was confused by Carter's promises. I love you, Nathan. We're married. You didn't love me, Samantha, I said, looking into her eyes without a single trace of anger or resentment left in my heart. You loved status. You loved prestige. And you threw me into a basement server room the moment you thought I dragged down your high society image. I was wrong, she wept bitterly, sinking back in her chair as the board members looked away in utter embarrassment. Please, Nathan, give me one more chance. Evelyn, I said, turning away from Samantha completely. Issue the restructuring order. Right away, Mr. Cross, Evelyn replied, handing me a leather folder. Vance Tech will operate as a subsidiary of Blackwood Dynamics, Julian declared to the room. And Nathan Cross will serve as chairman of the board. I picked up the fountain pen resting on the table, signed my name across the bottom line of the acquisition charter, and stepped out of the boardroom into my new future. 6 weeks after Blackwood Dynamics acquired Vance Tech, the morning sun broke over the glass towers of downtown Seattle. I stood in my new executive suite on the top floor, adjusting the sleeves of my custom dark charcoal suit jacket. My sister, Chloe Cross, stepped into the office, holding a polished leather folder. Everything is legally settled, Nathan. The final divorce decree and asset division agreements are ready for your signature. Thank you, Chloe, I said, turning to face her with a calm smile. You handled this entire process brilliantly. She made it easy by signing everything without a fight, Chloe noted dryly, setting the folder on my desk. Samantha knows she has no legal leverage left. Her mother tried to contest the trust, but my team shut that down immediately. Where is Samantha placed now? I asked, taking a seat at the head of the conference table. She's downstairs in the B3 administrative annex, Chloe answered, leaning against the edge of the desk. Julian assigned her to a junior documentation manager post. She enters bug reports and files compliance forms all day. Before I could reply, Julian Blackwood walked into the office, accompanied by his chief counsel, Evelyn Reed. Julian looked energized, holding 2 printed press releases. "Good morning, Chairman." Julian greeted me warmly, shaking my hand. "The market response to our joint restructuring has been extraordinary. Blackwood Dynamics stock jumped 15% after we announced the open-source neural initiative." "That's great news, Julian," I said, reviewing the reports Evelyn handed me. "How is the internal transition progressing?" "Carter Sterling tried to file a wrongful termination suit on Tuesday," Evelyn chimed in with a sharp smirk. "I sent his attorney the evidence of his corporate negligence and fake metric reports. He dropped the suit within 2 hours. Carter's father pulled his funds remaining capital as well," Julian added with a laugh. "The Sterling family is completely blacklisted across Silicon West. Nobody will hire Carter to manage so much as a lemonade stand." "He earned that outcome himself," I noted softly. "Arrogance always catches up with people who build their status on lies." "Speaking of which," Julian said, leaning forward, "Samantha requested 5 minutes with you outside the main lobby this morning. Security asked if you want her removed from the property." I paused, looking down at the divorce papers resting inside Chloe's folder. "No. Tell security to let her wait. I'll hand her these documents personally." 10 minutes later, I walked down the grand marble steps outside Vance Tech's corporate headquarters. The cool morning air felt crisp and refreshing against my face. Samantha stood near the fountain, wearing a plain black work dress, her hair tied back simply. Gone was the arrogant, cold woman who had publicly humiliated me at the gala. She looked tired, pale, and entirely drained. "Nathan," she gasped softly, taking 2 quick steps toward me before stopping herself. "Thank you for coming down." I didn't think you would speak to me." "I brought the finalized paperwork, Samantha," I said, holding out the white envelope. "Your attorney already reviewed the terms. I am leaving you with a residential condo and your personal vehicle." Tears trickled down her cheeks as she took the envelope with shaking hands. "Nathan, please, can we just sit down and talk for 10 minutes? I don't care about the condo or the money. There is nothing left to talk about," I replied calmly, keeping my posture relaxed and steady. "I made a terrible, unforgivable mistake," she sobbed, clutching the envelope tightly against her chest. "Carter lied to me. He convinced me that we needed his high society image to survive. My mother pushed me every day to chase status. I was blind, Nathan." "No, Samantha," I corrected her gently, looking straight into her eyes. "Carter didn't force you to mock my modesty on stage. Your mother didn't force you to demote me to a basement server room. You chose status over loyalty, because that's who you were." "I loved you, Nathan," she cried out, her voice cracking in front of passing employees. "I still love you. Every day I sit in that basement office, looking at the code you wrote, realizing I threw away the only man who ever truly cared about me." "You love the idea of success, Samantha," I said smoothly. "And when you thought I couldn't give you the prestige you craved, you discarded me without a second thought. Please give me a second chance," she begged, stepping closer, tears soaking her face. "I'll work as a junior manager for 10 years. I'll prove to you that I can change. Forgiveness isn't about giving you back your seat at my table," I said softly, stepping back from her reach. "I forgive you, Samantha. But our marriage ended the moment you decided my dignity was negotiable." She sank onto the marble bench beside the fountain, burying her face in her hands, weeping bitterly as the reality of her choices finally settled over her. I turned around and walked back toward the glass doors of the tower, feeling no anger, no bitterness, and no regret. Julian, Chloe, and Evelyn were waiting inside the bright, sunlit atrium. Chloe offered me a proud smile, while Julian handed me a fresh pen for the final foundation signatures. Ready to step into the future, Chairman? Julian asked warmly. I looked out at the bright Seattle sky, stepping forward beside my true allies. I've been ready for a long time,